first and foremost, let's get it right. That was a 3-0 victory in the North London derby. That's what Spurs need to do. They need to beat Arsenal first and foremost. And I think I'm right saying it was the biggest victory since, well, none of you three were alive the last time Spurs won 3-0. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah,
hooray.
Right. 1983, I think, wasn't it?
83 was their last win. It was 5-0. It was big. I mean, it was their biggest Premier League win ever over Arsenal, which felt like a bit of a trick of the mind because it was so comfortable and routine. Like James, you'll remember that 5-1 in the League Cup in 2008, or the 5-1 over Chelsea in the League Cup in 2002. Both of them felt like day of days, everything has just gone right and we have battered them. This felt, I think if you were imagining the biggest ever win over a margin of victory ever in the Premier League over Arsenal, you'd probably have imagined a more, I don't know, it to feel more extraordinary. This was just weirdly easy. And I know obviously that, a red card after half an hour goes a long way towards that. But even so, it was incredibly impressive how comfortable it was and how it didn't feel like, when you record a big victory, often you think, well, this is just a 1 in a million. We're never doing that again. Like that 5-1, it just felt like a kind of crazy day where everything went right. This reminded me, like, obviously, take away all the circumstances and everything and the emotion, it was very similar to the 3-0 win over Crystal Palace on Boxing Day, which you'd file in the, not really going to remember that game.
Routine.
Non-event. It was just totally routine. And it was actually very similar because Palace got a man sent off in the first half in that game as well. But it was just strange. Like the only thing missing from it, really, not that any Spurs fans would want this, because why would you want the stress, was any sense of competition in the game. No jeopardy, yeah, because from the moment the second goal went in, and of course, as fans, especially Spurs fans, you're going to be extremely fatalistic, and I'm sure the vast majority is still saying, I know we're 2-0 up, I know they've got a man down, but we'll find a way to mess this up. But rationally, and especially once the third goal went in, it was just blissfully comfortable, which I don't think, of all, going into the game, I think everyone thought, whatever happens, it's going to be stressful, it's going to be tense, it's going to be horrific to watch. And in the end, it was none of those things.
Well, that's what made it so interesting to me, was that we've seen Spurs win big games before through incredible energy and commitment and everybody playing out of their skin and everything. Whereas I'd be interested to hear your guys' take on this, but I can't remember the last time Spurs won a game this big where they won it through canniness and experience and clinicism and then closing out the game like that. It's not really something that Tottenham have done an awful lot of, I think, in the last few years.
I'd say, probably the North London derby last season, that 2-0 win just before Christmas, when similarly they kind of kept Arsenal at arm's length. But that was, I guess, slightly different because that was a really good defensive. That was when they were still playing like Højbjerg and Sissoko just sitting in front of a back four and restricting the opposition. But yeah, I mean, I said to Jack after the game, I thought it was odd because normally after a win like that, you come off being like, oh, wow, wasn't Kane incredible? Remember that Dyer block? Remember that Lloris save? And, didn't Højbjerg boss things? And Højbjerg did play well, as it happens, but it didn't feel like that kind of game where you're sort of raving about individual performances. As James said, it was controlled competence from front to back. And in the piece I wrote from the game, it was contrasting Spurs' cool heads against an Arsenal team who came, it felt, looking to show that they were hard and they were tough and they were streetwise and they were no longer this soft touch. And in the end, sort of damaged themselves more with that approach than the opposition. And I think the big incidents, I think the Cedric penalty, that probably is harsh. But I also think if you just jump for that properly, you don't give the ref a decision. And ditto Rob Holding. Yeah, I mean, Son, there was a bit of a lash out from him earlier as well, but he did it in a way that it was ambiguous enough. Holding made his blindingly obvious.
Let's come on to Arsenal's tactics in a second. Just to say, yes, it was one of those games where you could have given everybody in the team 8 out of 10, and there was one word, I think, of credit for Davinson Sanchez to be thrown back into a cauldron like that, having not played, I think, for 3 months as a starter. And I was so pleased that, because, let's be fair, he is no Xavi, is he? But that forward pass which set up the third goal, he won't get an assist because, of course, it goes pass, a WWF wrestling goal. But I was so pleased for him that he had an easy evening in the end.
And I did worry for him when after, I think it was about 4 or 5 minutes, there was a moment where Spurs were really struggling to get out and he got the ball and he was clearly like, just obviously the crowd wanted him to be Romero and go and do a Romero thing. And he was, clearly didn't have the confidence to do that. And I think he ended up coming back to Lloris and the crowd got on his back already.
Yeah.
And at that point I was thinking, Christ, it's going to be a really difficult evening if they're this nervous and anxious. And yet, they managed to find a way to get through it.
I mean, that definitely could have been a problem, couldn't it? Sanchez on the right of the free and Royale on the right.
Martinelli found spaces between them in the first 10 minutes or so. And after that, it wasn't so.
Yeah, they tightened up a little bit. And Royale, I mean, look, he probably wasn't quite Anfield levels from him again, but it was a very competent performance again from him, a good performance.
And he brought a brilliant save out of Arsenal's goalkeeper in the second half as well. I think, Charlie, that they will look back the Arsenal staff, not just the manager, the Arsenal staff on a night when they contributed to the team's downfall as well.
Well, it's a very young staff as well. That's the thing. It's not just a young team. Often we think of young teams with a veteran, experienced manager, but Arteta is very, very young himself. It's his first job, and I think he will learn loads from this. And I think that the shame of it might be for Arsenal is that he'll make all his mistakes while there, and then go off and be great for Barcelona or whoever. Though I think he is doing a very good job. I mean, I do think...
Hang on. I can't let that pass.
He's a Poundland pet, mate. He's a mug.
Barcelona have had like Ronald Koeman as their most recent manager. It's hardly...
He played for him, man.
We're giving you a chance to reverse out of that comment, Charlie. Beep, beep.
Arteta played for Barcelona B.
Did it? Oh, yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, he started at... he's a La Masia graduate. But I think on this occasion, he will... The mistake they made was that a draw for them would have been a fantastic result. And what they needed to do was take the sting out of it rather than kind of try and rile up the players and the fans. They needed to do the opposite of that. And maybe when the emotion subsides, he will regret that. I also think a lot of what he was saying afterwards was heart of hearts, he might know a lot of it was nonsense. But in a way, he's not going to dig out his own players. He needs to...
It's the same as Klopp the other night, isn't it?
Yeah, basically. Exactly. He needs to... They've got 2 games they need to win, and he needs, that Mourinho siege mentality that we used to hear so much about.
That was my best...
Conte has now rattled Jurgen Klopp and the Arsenal manager in the space of 5 days. It's been a pretty good... Yeah, I mean, like even putting the football aside, from the kind of, managers... From the political rivalry and managers' standpoint, it's been a pretty good week for Conte in that sense. And I'm sure, and I kind of said this the other day, I'm sure that's if he's thinking over the next few days, do I actually want to go to PSG next season? I bet he thinks, you know what, it's the Premier League is where it's at. Getting to go face to face with teams as good as Liverpool and Arsenal, rather than, the sort of drudgery of Liga and having to face. I
did think when he was facing the crowd. When that noise was hammering down onto him, I did think you must look at Son and Kane, listen to that stadium and think, can't be many better places to earn your living. Of course it's more competitive. I get that. In fact, the point about Arsenal being a great result, so that was one of the few bits of comfort I took before the game. They don't draw matches, do they? They've got the least draws of any team in the Premier League. So they would either win the game, which meant they must be coming at Spurs, which I think would suit Spurs, or they'd lost the game. So I held on to that. Talk to me about the post-match. We talked about Conte post-match. Arteta, of course, had gone into his siege cocoon. We get that. Did Conte have to dig him out about moaning?
He didn't have to. And I think, I think Conte... He's actually generally been quite, unless he's been absolutely berating himself and his team and the club, he's generally been pretty reserved. Like, he hasn't gone head to head, toe to toe with many other managers. He did a bit of it regards Klopp, but that was a couple of days after the event, so he'd cooled. But he absolutely went for him, and it really, I think it was quite a big moment potentially. Certainly, it just felt like he was very proud of his team and of the club, and he didn't want to be messed about, and he really wanted to make this point to Arteta. And the postponement has clearly massively rankled with him, as it has done with everyone at Spurs. We saw the statement, and obviously we know how the fans feel, and understandably so. It was a farce, that postponement. And so I think he had a lot of and in so doing, he had a lot of other grievances he wanted to get off his chest. And he used the device that Mourinho used to use a lot of, praeteritio, when you basically say, you talk about something by saying, I'm not talking about it. So, I'm not going to stand here and talk about the Labour Party's terrible record in government. And obviously by doing that, you're mentioning it. And he said that. He was like,
what is the rhetorical phrase for that?
Praeteritio.
Thank you. I'm just writing that down. Thank you very much.
It comes from the Latin praeterio, which means I overlook. And Cicero used it a lot. But he did that. So he was like, what a rhetoric.
Mark Langdon, he's going to have his sock knocked off when you do this on the radio.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'll be repeating all of this.
What an orator he was, by the way. But yeah, he... so Conte was able to say, I haven't done any complaining about the Fabinho fouls, or about the fact that we're playing Burnley at midday on Sunday, or about the fact that the game was postponed. I think he had a lot of things he wanted to get off his chest, and Arteta's moaning gave him the perfect platform to do that.
I mean, it was a fabulous night, a fabulous result, fabulous performance. Almost dreamlike at times, when you're, even I, heavily medicated, was able to relax. 40 minutes to go in a North London derby, and you've got your feet on the corner of the coffee table. I don't think so. Really, really good. Our personal experiences of getting to and from, you've heard mine, from ambulance to ecstasy in the space of 6 hours. Jack, you got into a situation comedy style, an ITV situation comedy style issue on the way home.
So just after I left you, Jack, as well. So I'm really sad I missed it.
Yeah, so I was, me, Charlie, and a few other journalists we got the train from White Hart Lane to Seven Sisters. Then I hope Charlie doesn't mind my saying, he took the Victoria Line northbound, whereas I took the Victoria Line southbound. So on the southbound platform, and there were hundreds and hundreds of Spurs fans there. This was about 11:45. Very raucous, very loud, very drunk. And there was a bloke next to me who was in rhythm with the Antonio chanting, was hammering the big metallic sign saying Seven Sisters Tube. Now I didn't realize this.
The roundel, I believe, is a technical term.
There you go.
If you're watching all the wrong YouTube videos,
clearly, and every time he did it, it kind of sent a plume of black dust that had been collecting behind the roundel probably for decades,
lovely,
spurting all over me. And so I all of a sudden I was just trying to ignore all this chanting going on around me, and all of a sudden my hands and arms were covered in black filth. And then I looked around and I was with Dan Kilpatrick from the Evening Standard and Miguel Delaney from the Independent, and they looked at me a bit funny. And my face and neck and bag and coat and hat were also covered in black dust. And I looked at this guy and I was like, come on, mate. And he said, oh, he kind of half apologized. And he said, next time, I don't even know what that means. It's a kind of apology. Next time you're not going to cover me in filth. And worst of all the Spurs fans got on the tube, and I had to kind of try to clean myself. And so using Miguel Delaney's hand sanitizer, a bottle of water, and Dan Kilpatrick's face mask, I basically gave myself an impromptu kind of wash down on the tube platform.
Did it not all just congeal?
Yeah, it did. I'm going to get this black dust, lava, the tube side off my arms, face, and neck. And the worst thing is, if you'd been just an ordinary Spurs fan around the tube station at that point, and you saw me, you must have thought, the state of that bloke. And it's like, it wasn't even my fault. It wasn't even my fault. And that's the worst thing, is coming eventually, got the tube back to Bermondsey and then an Uber home from Bermondsey. And when I came home, I had to have a shower, and I thought, if I'm going to come home covered head to toe in filth, I want to have got some fun out of it.
Yeah.
You watched Spurs smash Arsenal 3-0, mate.
Have
we checked Twitter
to see? I just didn't enjoy the process of being defiled by tube station dust.
Have we checked Twitter to see whether someone said, I saw that Jack Pitt-Brooke from The Athletic on the tube after the game and he was absolutely filthy?